Good evening and welcome. My name is Olga Chwa, and I'm delighted to welcome you in our Astroyoga class. And in a few days, we're coming upon a full moon. And what I offer here today might apply to any full moon, wherever you are in watching us and catching us live, as some of our participants are here on Zoom, and then in anyone who might be catching the recording out in the world. Thank you for watching and welcome. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to support this channel. I continue with physical movement, but for the moment, the breath is here and now, and you're in awareness of the body and the breath and the sounds, listening again to the space, to the world. This voice, these instructions among them, all the different sounds, taking a moment to remember that you're in the practice of yoga nidra. And perhaps staying there, perhaps remaining in the softness, adjusting the body for its comfort, always meeting that body's comfort. And as we have the moon currently in Taurus, letting the awareness come to the neck and just noticing where and how the neck feels. And if you're on the ground, it might be easiest to start with a little slow motion no. And if you're sitting up, that might also be available. A little slow motion no. However, that range of motion is available in your neck. Little tiny movements as a choice, as the choice to awaken from this practice, feeling the body, maybe stretching a little, maybe deepening the breath. And we'll stay with the neck for the next few minutes. Coming to stillness, seeing how else the neck might want to move. A little slow motion, yes. And that could be done against the floor with keeping the back of the head resting and just letting that back of the head slide a little bit. And it can even be more subtle. It could be about lengthening the back of the neck and letting that go. Lengthening through the back, bringing the chin down to the throat, and then letting that go, letting that spring back. A couple different ways to work with the slow motion, yes. And we'll come back to those a few times. We got the slow motion no. And you might add a little slow motion yes in that slow motion no. As you turn to wherever you're next comfortable moving, and then you could do a little looking up and looking down. The eyes might be doing all the movement, or there might be a little yes, or you might be just imagining, even just imagining what it feels like to move the head in these directions. Or starting to move, seeing which muscles are part of the starting team. And staying within a range that is comfortable, staying within a range that feels pleasant in the body. Slow motion no, slow motion yes, arriving to the center for a bit of a side bend, a kind of a rainbow shape or a horseshoe shape, with the ear moving towards the shoulder on the same side, so towards. And it's kind of an up and over, right? It's not about bringing the shoulder in, it's keeping that arching, that up and over, letting the neck find its openness through the sides. It's a lateral flexion in the physical therapy and massage world. Lateral to the side, flexion, bending. So we've got these three movements, and you might combine some of them here again. You might add that yes in the side bend. The head can be to the side, and there's a little yes in there. Looking up, looking down. All along the way to the one side to the other side. And as the joints move, if you're listening to them, if you're moving slowly, they will hopefully be responding with creating a bit more synovial fluid. That's that natural lubrication that all the joints have. And these little gentle movements, all the movements help them create more of that lubricant within the joints to give you greater comfort. And we'll do one more neck movement as you arrive at the center, as you complete these options. Imagine your nose is a pencil or a paintbrush, and you're drawing a tiny circle right in front of you. If you're laying on the floor, it's on the ceiling. If you're sitting up, it's on the wall opposite. It's not a great big head roll. It's not what you used to do in gym class. This is a tiny little, almost like a spiral, and maybe even as small as a penny or a dime. Strange that dimes are smaller, right? Teeny tiny little loop. And that might get bigger if it feels good to get bigger. But if you're making that spiral bigger, check that the jaw is loose. Check that the tongue is soft. You're going as fast as it takes a whole breath from the low point to the inhale at the top point and a whole exhale around. Slowing it down, it might take several breaths. If there's parts that feel sticky or jaggedy or square, slowing those parts down to find as smooth of a shape. It might be small, it might be the size of an orange or a little salad plate there. And if you haven't changed directions, come to a stopping point, a still point to go the opposite way. Move the head around and round. Slow as can be, soften the jaw, soften the tongue for the neck movement. And we will stay at the mouth and the jaw for some jaw movements as you arrive into your stillness from these neck movements, finding your comfort, adjusting wherever you are, that you might be lying down, you might be sitting up, but checking in if that suited the neck, if you had a favorite direction of those movements. Is there something that feels like it's missing, like some diagonal that might be like, hey, what about this way? This is the moment to add in anything else to the neck or any personal practices you have there for the neck. And we can move into the jaw with a little slow motion and open and close, like you're a fish in an aquarium. Nice and slow. As far as it opens, if you want to. If that makes you yawn and you want that, go for it. But not necessarily, just sort of exploring whether the left and the right are good partners, if they're same speed. Opened and closed a few times, and then like a drawer, coming a little bit open, just like a little, maybe quarter of the way open. And if your teeth were a drawer, you could pull them out to an underbite, push them into an overbite. Only as far as it feels good, taking a little moment to explore that jaw forward and back. You might need to remind your tongue to soften while you do that. You might need to take a swallow at some point. And then you come back to your natural position, to your neutral position. We'll do a third one in this jaw set. And this one, horses are known to do to self-soothe. So if you feel some good feelings doing it, the animals know a thing in the world. It's moving side to side. So opening a little bit and shifting the mandible there, the lower jaw, a little to the left, a little to the right. Seeing what kind of effects that produces around the face, around the neck. And as you complete these movements, if you are choosing to do them, let's finish with some air, mouthwash. The mouth is closed. You fill your cheeks with air. And give that an air swish. Notice what you've done to the face, to the jaw, and to the neck. And let this awareness move through the whole body, saying hello to the shoulders. You might need to shrug and wiggle them a little bit. Notice your elbows and wrists and hands, and just checking in with them and seeing if there's anything they'd like. Some people like a finger stretch or a fist. You might have a little need there to work something out. As the awareness moves down into the body, we're going to hang out with the thighs and I'll go on the chair first, and the feet as promised. Talked a little bit about the ankles being part of our theme here with Aquarius, with Jupiter being in Aquarius these days. So let the awareness go down to the feet and the ankles. And if you're lying down, you might do this with your legs extended. You might lift them up. Some people like to be on the ground and have the legs pointing to the ceiling. That's an option. And if you're on the chair, wherever they are is great. You might want to get them in a place where you can do some movements. And those movements start simple. They start with a flexion and an extension. So that would be lifting and lowering. Got my socks with pink toes to help you hopefully see that contrast. One at a time or both together. Feeling into that if they like to move together. Bonus, if one of them feels really different than the other, you might come back and see what that difference is, slowing it down like you did with the neck. Up and down. And then we'll add the toes. So you'll lift the foot and then you'll curl the toes down. Oh, I think I make my sock a little tighter so you can see that moving. And lift the toes up, curl them, lift the ankle up, curl the toes down, and come down toes to the ground, and then let them flatten out. And then the toes lift up, and you lift with the toes lifted up. We play this little game that the toes curl down to the floor, and then the toes curl up to the floor. It's almost like a tiny toe bicycle down there. That you're scooping up in one direction and lifting up with those toes leading the way. I'm starting with one foot to focus. You might be coordinated enough to do both together, and you might need a rest there, and you might need to come back to the one that hasn't done this yet and do the same thing. So the same direction, it's got two directions, so we're going to come back to this. And the first one I suggested is that you lift the ankle and close the toes down, like you're trying to push something away with that big toe when you get to the floor. If you're in the air, you're like trying to scrape something upward or away from you with the toes. And then we'll go the opposite direction. And that opposite direction is when you lift the toes. Now the toes are up like a high heel shoe, and they come down heel first and flatten out, and then they come up curled over. That one can get a little tricky, so you might take a moment to explore whether your toes, it's almost like you're grasping something, like your toes are trying to pick something up, and the ankle helps them up on one side, on the other side, 2 or 3 on each side. Going through those toe movements. I had a high school dance teacher who said you could do this all day under your desk. If you're in a class that's boring, you can practice some of these toe warm-ups, toe movements. Advice to live by. So feeling through your feet, through your toes, noticing what else they need, and maybe they need a wiggle, maybe they need a little shake. All those movements are welcome. And this promise will do a little something with the thighs. Well, the thighs are between the knees and the hips, so we're going to hang out with the knees and the hips, and the knees also on our agenda with our several planets in Capricorn there. Whether you're sitting or lying down, pick one leg to start with, and that's going to be just a little lifting and lowering, finding that leg in its bent position and its open position. And that open position might be all the way open. That might be a direction to explore. It might be all the way bent, or it might be somewhere in the middle, right? Wherever that range of motion is comfortable and available. We're starting with, where does the knee open and close? What are those points? On one side, on the other side. Doing both sides together is demanding of the core strength. Some people like that. Some people want the demand. And that's always an option, but dividing them out, I think, also helps the awareness. It helps the brain talk to that side of the muscles. So I'm quite a fan of dividing them up. So we got the open and close, and now pick one of the legs, and you can, if you're feeling like holding it, that's a welcome thing to do, because we want to stop it at a right angle. And wherever you are, if you're on that chair, if you're on the floor, you can have it at the right angle. If you're on your back, you got it at a right angle, wherever that right angle is, and you find the side to side. So like drawing a little dash with the foot, a minus sign. And that's only really possible in the knee. I mean, there's a couple different things the knee can do, but this internal and external flexion, it does it in cooperation with the hip. And it's really only possible when the knee's bent. So that 90-degree angle is part of our strategy, finding that dash. And then we've got 4 points then. We've got the open point and the closed point. We got the inside point and the outside point. And the next game is to connect the dots. And that might be that might be small as an orange, as an apple. And it might be a bigger connecting of the dots, a bigger connecting of those 4 points. And it's probably not perfectly round. For most bodies, that looks like if you actually were drawing a line with your foot, it'd be more of an oval or a teardrop, egg shape, narrower at the top. Change directions if you haven't. We go left, we go right. And anything you do on the left, you're invited to do on the right. And you're more than encouraged to rest, to give yourself plenty of rest in between, especially between one side and the other, especially at a moment to compare. I kind of rushed through my own in that teaching there, but taking your time to move the knees in those two directions. And again, the ambitious, the one seeking out strength, this is quite demanding of the core strength. So if you are looking for that kind of engagement, this is the variation, the modification to do both together, but one at a time. Could even be in kind of a low position, drawing a circle around on the floor. And from a seated position, getting into our knees, and then we've got our friends, the hips. And with the hips, we'll begin. If you're sitting in a chair, that'll be a little walking in place, that'll lifting that whole thigh bone, because we're focusing on the quads, the thighs, are the planet Sagittarius, or the formation, the zodiac of Sagittarius is what rules the things that move us forward in the world. So you might even have your hands on your thighs. If you're sitting on the ground, you can do something very similar, right? From a sitting position, and the same thing lying down. If you're on your back, having the hands feel through that movement as one leg lifts and the other. And the option for those that are looking for more challenge, for more effort, the option of both legs together, which engages the musculature of the iliacus and the psoas, so those deep hip flexors. It's probably more difficult on a chair, I think. Woo! I don't know if I can do that from a sitting position. So taking it easy and gentle with yourself as we generate some of that heat, some of that warmth. And then we'll come into a gentle twist. So if seated, the legs stay right where they are, and it's the upper body that finds itself tall, lengthening up a little bit, and then looking to one side, seeing how much through the shoulders, through the neck is available for that turn in one direction. If it feels good, hanging out there for a few breaths, letting the exhales keep it soft, and switching directions. And we'll be with this for a few moments here, maybe 20 or 30 breaths. So there's no rush as you enjoy next a little twist around the waist area. So the hips are in the chair, they're steady, and on the floor, the alternative is to move the lower bodies to keep that upper body stable. And to bring the legs from one side to the other. So the alternative of the floor twist. In effect, the same parts of the body are engaged, a lot of the same benefits from these two variations. Different relationship to gravity, a little different effort and demand for the muscles. Practicing a little, resting a little more, making that a balanced practice of one and the other. And as you finish with your twists, as you come back to the center, feel through what you've done. We've done some toe and ankle movements, some knee and hip stuff. We began with the neck, so feeling through that, noticing if your body needs any other specific things. Again, maybe the shoulders are saying, when is it going to be shoulder time? And I'll tell you, according to the medical astrology, it is Gemini who rules the shoulders. So we'll sneak them in, but they're going to really get their attention come May. Seeing if any other part of you needs a wiggle or a stretch. And we'll do. I'll offer a few things in a standing position. If you would like to stay seated or lying down, this can all be done in those other positions. And if standing is welcome, if it feels like a good time to stand, then you might even begin with a little walk. As we connect with the thighs there, with Sagittarius, and that which moves us forward. To come into a standing position, and if you are standing, the knees are ready to move. And the shoulders might shrug a little bit and go behind and drop down there. So you've got this openness between the collarbones. And that can be done in a seated position, right? If you're still down low, you can find that superhero emblem, body, chest, interlacing the fingers, reaching overhead for a whole spinal lengthening, up, upward reach through the middle of the body. If that's available, if that feels good. If one of the shoulders doesn't feel good, the same thing can be explored with just kind of that reach through the back of the neck and a softening. And if you're on the standing practice of things, you might even take that up to the toes. Taking a few moments to lengthen the spine, the invitation to get closer to the sky, which can also be done lying down. If you're extended on your back, you can be practicing this lengthening. Coming into a side bend next from the middle, from the standing position, all side to side. And that can be anywhere as well. It's trickier on the floor. On the floor, you got to make yourself into a banana, kind of walk your feet one side and the other. But on the chair, that could just be leaning to one side and the other. And the arm can get involved. That ceiling side arm can be an option. If it feels good to do that, it makes a little change in intensity. Several different options of where the arms go. And we'll do another twist. If you are in the standing practice, then the twist begins with a great big reach and wrapping the arms around the body to look behind. Which again can be a little more engaged of a reach with the arms from the sitting position, unlike the other one where the arms were resting, getting the shoulders and the arms as part of the game. Reaching left, reaching right, letting this movement warm up the body as we come into the cold moon here, the December moon, generating the internal heat through the muscular movements, and then coming into stillness to feel those effects upon completing those movements. If you're standing, you might sit down. If you're sitting, you might lie down. If you're sitting on a chair that you scooted up, you might scoot back into it and get as comfortable as you can possibly get for the next few breaths. As you take another moment to feel through the body, to feel through what you have done, what the sensations are. And what else the body might need, what else the body might be calling for in its needs. I think one main element that I would like to bring in towards wrapping up the different movements is something for the whole spine. And that can be a forward-backward combination bend. It can be done standing, it can be done sitting in a chair position, if it's possible to be at the edge of that chair to have the space behind to roll is maybe more comfortable, but finding however that works, and then I might even be with the fingertips on the shoulders as an option, but we'll get there in a moment. The focus will be a sitting cat pose. So from a sitting position to a rounded position, the back rolls forward, the eyes gaze down, and then reversing that, sticking the tail out, the belly forward, and looking up. And finding this whole spine move in a forward and back. And that might be it with the hands on the thighs and the knees as I'm showing, and it might also be a bigger, even bigger movement with the fingertips on the elbows and engaging the shoulders to be a part of this, elbows together and elbows apart. The advantages of practicing on a seat, on a chair, that you've got this access to the shoulders. It's a modification of a cat pose. If there are folks who are floor types, you might want to just get in that forward, backward bend on the hands and knees. And it can also be done standing, right? Anything that we were doing before, that roundedness and that backward. It's about scooping that tail in and sticking that tail out for a few breaths to get the hip joints moving, to get the low back in a flexion and an extension, to get the middle back, all those bones where those ribs connect, to get a little movement in the neck and back to our slow motion yes here. The whole body's saying yes to the resources that you are calling in. So rest is needed as you find your satisfaction there, as you find your warmth. Doing a little engagement and a lot of rest. As we move into the final piece of our practice together, which is back into an awareness of the body and the breath, not as involved as a yoga nidra, but a guided breathing practice, a breath work from here and for the minutes that ensue. So as you finish up these movements, you feel what else you might need, and do take your time. If there's another stretch or some sort of personal physical therapy practice that feels perfectly natural to weave in here, that's always welcome. So notice how you feel. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. Thank you for watching, for doing it at your speed and at your pace. Thank you for watching. Please like the video and leave a comment about your experience. And while you're here, please subscribe to my channel and opt in for notifications to catch the next class I upload. And then head over to olgachwa.com to join in a live event or to work one-on-one with me. I'm here to help.